Level 1, the Halcón. You are 12 years old, maybe 13. The money you brought home last week was more than your father made in the entire month before it. You live in a small town in the Sierra Madre Mountains in Sinaloa, Mexico. The mountains here are green and steep and beautiful and completely controlled by one organization. You have known this your entire life without anyone ever having to explain it. Your job is simple. You stand on a corner. You watch the road. You have a cheap phone with 2 contacts saved in it, no names, just numbers. When you see something, a police truck, a stranger asking questions, a military convoy, you call the first number and say a word. One word, pre-agreed. Then you walk away like you were never there. The word for the army is butterflies. You are not sure why. You did not pick it. You earn 300 pesos a day, that is about $17. You are one of thousands of Halcón's lookouts spread across every town, mountain pass, and border crossing in the Sinaloa Cartel's territory, which covers more than half of Mexico's states and extends into the United States in every direction. Halcón means hawk. You are a hawk. You are 12 years old and you watch roads for a living. Here is what the Sinaloa Cartel understood before anyone else did. Information is the product before the product. Knowing the army is coming before the army arrives is worth more than any single shipment. So they built a surveillance network out of children, out of old women selling food on corners, out of taxi drivers and shop owners and teenagers on motorcycles, a human radar system that covers every road in their territory 24 hours a day for almost nothing. You cost less than electricity, and you are everywhere the real radar is not. You go home at night and eat dinner with your family. Your mother thinks you are running errands for a man down the street. The man down the street is real. He works for someone who works for someone who, at the very end of that chain, works for a short, stocky man from a village called La Tuna, who grew up just like you and figured out that the mountains of Sinaloa have always grown one thing better than anything else. Level 2, the Barrero. You are carrying 2 kilograms of pure methamphetamine strapped to your torso under a cotton shirt. You are standing in line at a port of entry on the US-Mexico border. The line moves slowly and you have been practicing how to breathe normally for 3 weeks. You are not sure your breathing is normal. You are sure the guard is looking at you specifically. The guard is looking at everyone. You are not special. You are cargo. The Sinaloa Cartel moves its drugs in every way that has ever been invented. Tunnels, real tunnels, engineered tunnels with electricity and ventilation and small rail systems running more than a kilometer under the border between Tijuana and San Diego. One tunnel found in 2019 stretched nearly a kilometer, had a rail system, a ventilation system, and an elevator. It cost up to $2 million to build. The DEA called it the most sophisticated they had ever seen. The cartel had already used and abandoned dozens of others. But tunnels get found. The cheapest and most scalable method has always been you. A person crossing with products strapped to their body is invisible in the noise of 44 million legal border crossings every year. You are one of hundreds of barreros working the same crossing on the same day. Most will not be stopped. The ones who are stopped go to prison carrying someone else's product for wages that would not cover their bail. If you are caught, the cartel does not come for you. There is no lawyer, there is no deal. You knew this when you took the job. The fee for one crossing is between $1,000 and $3,000 depending on the product and the route. You did not assess the risk. Someone above you assessed it and decided the level was acceptable. That someone is not crossing today. You cross. You hand the product to a man in a parking lot 3 blocks from the port of entry. He drives away. You wait 45 minutes in a nearby restaurant as instructed. Then you cross back and wait for your money. The cartel has moved 2 kilograms of methamphetamine into the United States for a street value of approximately $44,000. Your cut is $1,500. The math on this arrangement is not complicated once you see it clearly. Level 3, the Sicario. You joined the Sicarios at 19, not because you wanted to kill someone. Because a recruiter came to the town where you were running a Halcón network at 17, watched you work for 6 months, and made you an offer that was not really an offer. In the Sinaloa Cartel, the difference between a request and a demand is mostly a matter of tone. A Sicario is a hitman. The cartel employs hundreds of them. Your first job is a man who stole from a plaza boss 3 states away. You are given a car, a gun, a specific address, and a phone number to call when it is done. You are not given a reason. Reasons are for managers. Here is what the Sinaloa cartel understood about violence that made it different. Violence is a cost, not a strategy. El Chapo was not interested in violence for its own sake. He bribed before he killed. He partnered before he invaded. The Sinaloa cartel became the most powerful trafficking organization in history, not because it was the most violent, the Zetas were more violent, but because it was more disciplined about when and why it used violence, which made the violence more effective when it arrived. Violence draws attention. Attention draws the army draws the DEA. You do what you are told and nothing extra. You are not paid to improvise. At the El Chapo trial in Brooklyn in 2018 and 2019, witnesses described how El Chapo ordered killings personally, directly, sometimes while eating. Bodies were dissolved in barrels of acid, private prisons where rivals were interrogated and killed. The cartel ran entire infrastructure to support what you do now. You have never been in the same room with anyone who has met El Chapo. You are not that important yet. But you are the thing that keeps the whole structure intact, which means you are, in the way that foundations are important. Very important indeed. Level 4, the Cocinero. You run a laboratory, not a white coat lab, a sweltering building in the mountains of Sinaloa where barrels of precursor chemicals arrive in trucks and leave as finished product 12 hours later. You are the cook. The Sinaloa cartel was built on cocaine, but it evolved. Cocaine required a supplier in Colombia, methamphetamine required only precursor chemicals from China, which could be imported and converted domestically. The cartel switched. Then it switched again to fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine that can be pressed into counterfeit pills and requires nothing from Colombia at all. Precursor chemicals for fentanyl come mostly from China. Chinese chemical companies supply the ingredients through shell companies. The cartel imports them through ports in Mexico where customs officials have received the appropriate payments. In your lab, these chemicals become pills. Pills become packages. Packages become the hundreds of thousands of counterfeit prescription tablets crossing into the United States every week. Your lab is always temporary. A permanent lab is a location that can be found. You set up, produce, and move. The equipment gets replaced, not repaired. The building is abandoned after a few production cycles. You have run 7 labs in 4 years. You have never been arrested. 1 kilogram of pure methamphetamine produced in your lab cost the cartel a few $1,000s to make. On American streets, that kilogram sells for between $30,000 and $60,000. Fentanyl is more concentrated and therefore more profitable per kilogram than almost any substance in the history of illegal trade. You do not think about the people who use the product. Most people in supply chains do not think about the end of the chain. Level 5, the distributor. You run a crew of 8 people. They are your responsibility, which means if one of them does something stupid, the consequence travels back to you before it travels to them. This is how accountability works in the Sinaloa cartel, and it works efficiently. Your job is the middle. You receive product from the labs, move it toward the border, coordinate with the barreros and tunnel operators and safe house managers, and collect payments coming back in the other direction. You are the logistics layer. The cartel's genius at this level is its franchise model. El Chapo did not try to control every drug sale in every American city. He controlled the supply. He sold wholesale to established gangs in Chicago, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Atlanta, New York, who handled retail. The Sinaloa cartel is believed to have moved more drugs into Chicago than into any other American city, not by running Chicago's streets themselves, but by supplying the organizations that did. The cartel stayed in the wholesale business, which is cleaner, more scalable, and significantly less likely to mean contact with retail-level law enforcement. You change your burner phone every 2 weeks, you never use the same route consecutively, you vary the vehicles, the crossing times, the personnel. These are rules the cartel enforces because the people who broke them got caught, and the cartel learned from each arrest the way a company learns from a failed product. It adjusted and continued. You have never been to the United States. Everything you move disappears into it and money comes back out and the cycle continues. You earn a regular salary that makes you middle class in Sinaloa. You have a house, you have a car, you have children in school. Nobody in your neighborhood asks where you work. Level 6, The plaza boss. You own a plaza. A plaza is a territory, a city, a region, a border corridor. Everything that moves through your plaza moves because you allowed it. Anyone who sells drugs in your plaza pays you a tax called the piso a floor because it is the price of doing business on your floor. Rivals who operate without paying disappear. This does not need to be explained more than once. The cartel identified the territories that mattered strategically, the border corridors, the port cities, the mountain routes, and controlled those with ruthless discipline while allowing everything around them to function normally. The towns in the plaza looked like ordinary Mexican towns. Schools operated, restaurants opened, the cartel was simply the deeper layer beneath all of it, invisible to tourists and present to everyone who lived there. You pay upward in two directions simultaneously. You pay the cartel leadership a percentage of everything that moves through your plaza, and you pay sideways to the government officials who make your plaza possible. At El Chapo's trial, testimony described payments to local police commanders, state attorneys general, military officers, and federal officials. $10 million paid twice to Mexico's federal police commander, $6 million to the federal security chief, $100 million allegedly paid to the office of then-President Enrique Peña Nieto. You are not paying those officials. That is above your level. You pay the local police chief, the municipal commander, the army colonel whose unit patrols your mountain roads. You pay them regularly without drama. It is a business expense. A plaza boss earns hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, sometimes more. You have people who manage your people. You have security. You have influence that does not require a title or a uniform because everyone already knows. Level 7. The Chapo. You command multiple plazas. Plaza bosses report to you. Sicario units are under your command. You have relationships with the labs, the distribution cells, and the connections on the US side. You are, by any reasonable definition, a regional criminal general. The Sinaloa cartel at this level was organized around trusted family networks and childhood friendships rather than corporate hierarchy. El Chapo did not promote strangers. He promoted men from La Tuna who had grown up in the same mountains and understood the same unspoken rules. Your most important job is stability, not expansion. The cartel is already everywhere it needs to be. Stability. You keep the plazas producing. You manage violence so it does not escalate into the kind of conflict that attracts national military intervention. You negotiate with rivals when negotiation is cheaper than war, and you authorize war when it is not, and you make sure the line between those two is never crossed by accident. The cartel's total estimated earnings were somewhere between $3 billion and $39 billion a year, depending on whose estimate you believe, the US Treasuries, the DEAs, or the academic researchers. The range is wide because nobody has ever fully counted it. Even at the low estimate, divided across a regional command structure, a capo manages a business larger than most corporations most people have ever heard of. Level 8. The Contador. You do not carry drugs, you do not kill people. You manage money. And the money is the size of a problem that has no good solution. At its peak, the Sinaloa cartel was generating so much cash that storing it was a logistical challenge. Cash is heavy. $1 million in $20 bills weighs approximately 50 kilograms. Moving it in bulk is conspicuous. The cartel needed better methods. The methods evolved. Bulk cash was smuggled back across the border in vehicles. The cartel used trade-based money laundering, inflating invoices of legitimate Mexican import businesses to justify wire transfers from US accounts. They used real estate, buying properties in cash through layers of shell companies, and increasingly, they used Chinese underground banking networks. Chinese criminal networks in the United States collect drug cash from cartel distributors, then wire the equivalent value to cartel accounts in Mexico from Chinese business bank accounts that look, from the outside, like normal international transactions. The commission is as low as 1 or 2%. The cartel pays less to launder $1 billion than most people pay in bank fees. You coordinate this. You run the shell companies. You manage the relationships with underground banking contacts. You pay the bribes that keep the financial infrastructure intact. You have a business degree from a Mexican university and a second home in a city where nobody asks questions. Several people in your family think you work in international finance. They are not wrong. Level 9, El Mayo. You have been running this organization for 30 years and you have never spent a single day in prison. This is not luck. This is discipline applied over decades in ways that most people are not capable of. You are Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia. You are El Chapo's co-founder and co-leader of the Sinaloa Cartel. While El Chapo was the face, the legend, the escapes, the Rolling Stone interview, the Netflix series, you were the structure. While El Chapo was being captured for the third time, you were in the mountains. While El Chapo was in a Brooklyn courtroom, you were somewhere in Sinaloa, conducting business. The difference between you and El Chapo is not intelligence. The difference is restraint. El Chapo gave an interview to a Hollywood actress and a famous journalist while he was a fugitive. You have never given an interview in your life. El Chapo called his wife on a monitored phone. You communicated through intermediaries, in person, without electronics when possible. El Chapo trusted people who eventually betrayed him. You trusted a smaller circle, verified over longer periods. For decades, the Mexican government made little visible effort to capture you. Whether this was because you had arranged for their lack of interest, or because you were genuinely harder to find than El Chapo, is a question the trial testimony only partially answered. In July of 2024, you were arrested not by the Mexican government, but by the American one, after being brought to the United States under circumstances still debated. Your son claims he was tricked into delivering you. You are 76 years old and in American federal custody. You spent 50 years building the most successful drug trafficking organization in history. You outlasted every partner, every rival, and every government that tried to stop you. 50 years is not nothing. Level 10, El Chapo. You were born in 1957 in a village called La Tuna in the mountains of Badiraguato Municipality, Sinaloa. Your family grew vegetables and a little marijuana the way most families in the region did, because the mountains of Sinaloa grow marijuana the way other mountains grow corn naturally, plentifully, and with no particular moral weight attached. You left school before finishing primary. There was no money and no outcome waiting on the other side of school that seemed worth the effort. You learned the drug trade from Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, the godfather of Mexican trafficking, the man who organized the first generation of cartels after the Colombian cocaine trade needed Mexican roots north. You were his logistics man. You were very good at logistics. When Felix Gallardo was arrested in 1989, the organization fractured and you took your piece, the Sinaloa corridor, the Pacific routes, the mountains. You knew better than any map and you built. What you built over 30 years became the most powerful criminal organization in the Western Hemisphere. You moved cocaine for the Colombians when cocaine was the primary product. You switched to methamphetamine when DEA disrupted Colombian supply routes. You switched again to fentanyl when the synthetic era began. You were not loyal to any drug. You were loyal to the route, the infrastructure, the franchise model, and the bribery network. The product was interchangeable. The system was not. You escaped from a Mexican maximum security prison in 2001 by bribing the guards and walking out. You escaped from a different maximum security prison in 2015 through a tunnel. Your organization spent more than a year digging from a house a kilometer away to the shower floor of your cell. The tunnel had electricity, ventilation, and a motorcycle on rails. You were free for 6 months before being caught again in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, after a gun battle with Marines that you survived by crawling through a storm drain in the street. You were extradited to the United States in 2017. Your trial in Brooklyn ran through 2018 and 2019. 14 former associates testified against you. You were convicted on all 10 counts. The judge gave you life in prison plus 30 years. You are held at ADX Florence in Colorado, the most secure prison in the United States, in a cell with no view of the outside world. Before sentencing, you told the judge you had not received a fair trial, that you were being made a scapegoat, that the corruption ran above you and through you and continued after you on both sides of the border. The judge was unmoved. The Sinaloa cartel continued after your arrest. It continued after El Mayo's arrest. Your sons run a faction of it now. The cartel did not depend on you because you did not build it to depend on you. You built it to outlast anything, including yourself. The village of La Tuna is still there. Boys still grow up in those mountains. The mountains still produce the same things they always have. Which level surprised you the most? Was it the 12-year-old on the corner? The tunnel with the motorcycle on rails? The $100 million allegedly paid to a sitting president? Because none of it was secret. It was all happening in plain sight for decades in front of everyone. That is the part that does not have a clean ending.